Every one of us carries a story we don't always talk about. The quiet battles, the heavy days, the moments that cracked us open, and the moments that stitched us back together. We've all stumbled. We've all broken. We've all stood at the edge of something we weren't sure we could come back from. And somehow, through strength we didn't know we had, we rose anyway. Because inside every person, there is a spark that refuses to die, a hope that refuses to stay silent, a heart that refuses to give up no matter how dark the night gets. And that's why we're here, to listen, to learn, to witness the courage it takes just to be human. Every soul you hear on the show has walked through something that shaped them, sharpened them, and carried them forward. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a battle. Everyone has a journey. And this is where you come to hear it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome into Uncle Jimmy's podcast, Season 2. Today's episode feels especially tender and close to the heart. We're welcoming someone whose story moves gently into the deepest parts of the human experience. Grief, love, intuition, and the unbreakable bonds that continue beyond this world. Our guest, Jackie Rubio, author of From Murder to Messages, has walked a path few could imagine. Through unimaginable loss, she's discovered not only resilience, but a profound connection to the unseen, a connection that brought comfort, guidance, and light back into her life. Her journey is one of courage, of listening to the whispers of the soul, and of transforming pain into purpose. So today, let's slow down together, let's breathe. Let's create a warm, safe space for a conversation filled with honesty, compassion, and the kind of hope that feels like a soft blanket around your shoulders. Jackie, we are honored to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, that's quite the introduction. Thank you so much for that. Bring some tears to my eyes before we even start the conversation. Thanks to Uncle Jimmy. Hi, everybody. My name's Jackie Suzanne Rubio, and I am here today to talk about a book that I wrote called From Murder to Messages. We ask, why did you write this book? Well, I feel like I had no choice but to write this book. The book had to come out, and the book is based on, unfortunately, true story. My beautiful son, Devin Anthony Briggs, was murdered. It'll be 3 years. December 16th, 2022 was his death date. He was an amazing, amazing kid. 28 years old, tall, super handsome, but super shy. Devin was like a real awkward kind of guy. And I mean, a real straight and narrow. Like, I write about this a little bit in the book too. His moral compass just, it just went one direction. It never swayed like some of ours, do. That was like just his personality was amazing, and he was a real church kid. He really, really loved church a lot, and it meant a lot to him, and he kind of followed the straight and narrow, and he married real young. He was 20, and his ex-wife was 18 when they got married, and they had met in youth group, and then later on found each other and started dating. And it seemed like a good fit, but they were young. But other than that, it seemed like a good fit, and I was so happy for him. And he wasn't the kind of boy that like played around. He was very serious about his virginity and saving himself for marriage. That was just kind of the way it went. The marriage was short. And we soon found out that there was like a lot of real issues there. They had a baby right away, and she became to be like really controlling and just really, I don't know the correct words, but there was definitely, Devin wasn't allowed to sleep in the bedroom with her and the baby anymore, because he had like night terror. So she didn't want him in the room with them. He had to sleep on the couch. And that's just the way it went. He wasn't allowed to, have the baby with his family. He wasn't allowed to, do this with the baby or do that with the baby. She was very, very obsessive and controlling, and the marriage did end rather quickly, and not from him either. It was definitely on her end. She just wanted him out. And then later, not very long later either, she ended up in a same-sex marriage or relationship, not marriage, but a fiance. And it's sort of like still didn't let go of control. So they're divorcing. He should get, time with the child, and she still controlled all that. And she breastfed the baby till he was like 3 years old. So he wasn't allowed to go to overnight visits with his dad. It it just was poor Devin. He just really never got a chance to, to be a husband and a father, and that's all he ever wanted in his life was to be a husband and a father. But what happened was they ended up having some real big custody disputes, and my little grandson was like 6, and Devin had actually moved on. He'd got himself a fiance. He was like starting to sort of like understand life was kind of kicking his ass, to be real. Like that moral compass and that straight and narrow where you can only go one way. It sort of started to like hit him like, oh my gosh, I can't be like that. Like life was coming at me, and so it was interesting to watch him grow and then watch him really be able to start, spending time with his son, doing the things he wanted to do, like really come out of his own. He had this wonderful like fiance, and she had like a really big, loud family. And it was interesting because Devin's childhood was really tough. I was a terrible alcoholic. I was really like our household was super chaotic. I was really wild and loud, and Devin just hated it. Like it would just stress him out to no ends, and he didn't want to be there. So he would go spend his holidays elsewhere, and he would go to like the pastor and the pastor's wife's house, and the youth pastor and the youth pastor's wife's house, because that's where, it was quiet and where he felt comfortable at. So it's interesting to me that his fiance and her family were kind of boisterous and really loud and energetic. And I always thought, oh, but it's also brought him out of his shell, and so he was doing really well. But then the ex-wife started to make some really awful allegations against him, and they were bizarre. The allegations were bizarre, and they were really easily disputed.
Yep.
Because the things that were being said, like the kid would have had, welts and bruises and broken bones and things like that. And, every time she took him to a doctor, he never had anything wrong with him. So, but Devin, he had a fight, he was so, I can't get across how calm and methodical he was. He had to fight. So he had to dispute all the allegations. He had to go through the court system. He had to put up with, these things being done and said to him. And he was able to do it so calm and but there was some repercussions to that. So, custody attorneys aren't cheap. Yeah. And he had to forfeit his wedding money that they had saved for him sorry, I would cry a little bit, for him and his fiance to get married. He had to spend that on, fighting for getting back his visitations of his son. And he ended up filing for full custody. I mean, there was just so much that had transpired, and she was really, obviously there was something wrong in that home for her to be that controlling, that obsessive, that, and just willing to lie. So he filed for full custody, and it looked, like it was, going to go his way. And she was making like really weird threats. And I mean, I know it sounds weird because he's 6'4", and she's maybe 5 foot tall, but he was really afraid of her. And so he actually bought a dash cam for his car so that when he went to pick up his son, he could park it in a way where everything could be recorded, where she couldn't say things. And he'd actually repeatedly asked her to meet him at the police station where he felt more protected. And she wouldn't agree with that. So he was never going to her home alone to pick up my grandson for his visits. But we're talking about December 16th. So we're just a few weeks out of Christmas.
Yeah.
And his fiance and her mom and their family were Christmas shopping. And I don't know why he chose to do it, but he chose to go pick up my grandson that day by himself. And he got to the house and he pulled up to the door with the camcorder, with the car recording it, knocked on the door, and she opened the door and just opened fire on him. No words were spoken, no dispute, no, physical altercation. And my little grandson was in the home when it happened. And it was that's it. Like the end of his life. He was like such a good kid too. I mean, so just such a really good kid. He was a quiet kid. All he cared about was having a wife and child and his 401k and paying his taxes. He didn't drink because of his experience from the way he was raised. He could have went, a completely different direction, but instead, he really kind of stayed on the straight and narrow path.
Yeah.
So that's half the story. The
Yeah.
book title From Murder, and then the other half of the book is To Messages, and that's exactly what I'm glad to be able to speak about too. And I feel like that's the only reason why I'm sitting in front of you today is understanding that our consciousness does survive death. And in the book, I have some of the most amazing signs from him, and they're documented. I've got photos with it and just things like that to also help other people who are grieving.
Yeah. Yeah. No, first off, I want to extend my condolences and, I'm sorry for the loss of your son. You said, he had a great moral compass. He was, getting married again, taking care of his son when she would let him. And he shows up and he's murdered in cold blood. What happened to the ex-wife? Did she go to jail or?
Yeah. So this is, I mean, my story gets a little bit worse and a little bit more intense, unfortunately. So she did immediately get put in jail, and we live in the state of Oregon. So the state of Oregon finds it fit that when one parent murders another one, even on video camera, that parent maintains full custody rights.
Wow.
So I went into a very long, drawn out custody battle for my grandson, and I didn't win. I didn't even really get a chance to present my anything to the judges because there's a law in Oregon. It didn't matter what I did, and so I did for almost 2 years fight for legal custody of my grandson. And I haven't been able to see him or talk to him in 2.5 years at least now. That
Who
was
has
another,
custody?
like,
Who has custody of him now?
she gave him to her mom, who lives in another state, who will not allow me to have any contact. They have a narrative, and the narrative is that Devin abused him. The narrative is that Devin was this like horrible kid, even though his track record and his like, I mean, kid doesn't even hardly have a speeding ticket
Yeah.
ever.
And he was never arrested for anything. Never.
Nothing. He never drank. He didn't even smoke pot. I mean, in a state where it's legal, like, so that's, and they have the narrative, and they, I guess they just don't want a chance having that narrative change from my grandson. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, we were geared up to go to trial. We were told that, I mean, it's on video, but what she did was she pleaded for like extreme distress, extreme emotional distress, because she said that he was abusing my son and I had to kill him, basically. And we were all geared up to go to trial. I mean, here we have video footage, and we have there's not a single human being on the face of the earth that will testify that Devin had any character flaws in any way that would, make him abusive or scary or threatening. And then right at the end, right almost at trial, we lost our assistant DA. And so there's one DA in the whole freaking county, and he took a plea deal, gave her manslaughter.
And how long did she get? How long is she sentenced for?
So in the state of Oregon, she'll do a mandatory 10 years. After that, she would be available for parole or good behavior. So realistically, and they gave her credit for time served, which was 1.5 years in jail. So realistically, 7.5 years.
Wow. No, my heart goes out to you. So let me get into some questions for you. So when you look back on your journey, when was the moment you realized you needed to write From Murder to Messages?
I think it was pretty early on. I was having, like you can imagine, a lot of real dark grief, a lot of just real hard times, and just, the inability to see any comfort, any light, anything. But I would always get I would hear in my mind like something that if Devin were here, what he would say.
Yeah.
And it would come with funniness and quirkiness and his personality. So I would write it down. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what prompted me to do that.
Yeah.
Can you hear that background noise? Okay. One of the kids is out there doing something with their firewood.
No, I can't hear them at all.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
So I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I would start to just, and even I was crying all the time. I was just like not able to think straight, not able to focus, not able to, hardly hold still. And I didn't understand a lot of what was going on. I felt really cloudy. And so I don't know if I was like just sitting there, there'd be an envelope in front of me, and I would hear like Devin would say something like, or I'd stub my toe, and he would laugh, ha ha, ma, because that's what he would have done.
Yeah.
He would pick on me a lot.
Yeah.
That was part of our relationship, and so it would make me write down. You know, like if Devin were here, he would say, ha ha, ma.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just did that for quite a while. And then the writing sometimes would get longer. And I would, come out of it, come out of being so sad and look down and there'd be, a page of all the things I think Devin would say if he were here,
Yeah.
you know, in his complete and total voice. So it just kind of like started to pile together. The writing was just really bringing me some relief. And hearing his voice in my mind was really bringing me some relief.
Okay.
And I thought like I was just coping, like I was just grieving and making it up, but it was bringing me some relief. So I continued to do it. And then those messages and those signs just got so much more clear
Yeah.
that it almost got harder to dispute them. Although I continued to dispute them. And then I would go to sleep at night and I would see the cover of this book, the title of the book, and like the front of the book. And I would just go, okay. So I realized like, yeah, it was gonna have to get written.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's almost turning your pain into purpose, And one of the things I can say to you is that, after my mom passed a couple years back, I was in bed and I didn't want to get out of bed. And I literally almost the same thing where my mom was saying to me, come on, Jimmy boy, get out of bed. Come on, Seamus, get out of bed, get to work. And literally it was like she was in the room with me where we almost, then we almost think to ourselves, am I going crazy or am I really hearing that? You know? And I was hearing my mother for, like I said, tough days. I would hear her voice. And, I do a little thing for my dad. My dad passed almost 16 years ago, I believe. So what I do is around Christmas time, I do a little giving back and I take a family or one kid and his mom and dad shopping, and I let them spend $750 for Christmas in memory of my dad. And
Oh,
I remember a couple years back after my mom had passed and the same thing, my mom had passed and I wasn't going to do it because I was down and out. And I remember hearing that message, come on, you need to do it. Do it for me now, And I was literally in my head like, I think I'm going crazy, but I understand where you're coming from. It's small little things like that, voices or messages or certain like, my father's union was 2222 was the number, 2222. And last week I was having a bad day and I prayed to my father and I said, I'm having a bad day. Give me a sign. It's going to be all right. And I go into the convenience store and I got 2 drinks and pack of cigarettes. And I look at the total. It was 2222.
wow. Yeah.
And the other store I go to, it's $18.93 for what I get. And there it was $22.22. I didn't complain about the price because I really didn't care, but it made me smile and think about my father,
Yeah.
So can you share the very first message or sign you received that made you pause and truly feel a connection beyond this world?
Yeah. So it's the first one that really stood out to me. It's actually in the book.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and share it a little bit. I was in a custody fight for my grandson. And I was asked by the judge to move. The home I live in is 2.5, 3 hours away. I was purchasing it, but I was asked to move to the town where my grandson was. So that way I could keep him in his school, which I was so willing to do. You have no idea. Like I would have abandoned, the house if I had to and let it go back to the mortgage, whatever it had to happen to
Yeah.
be there for my grandson. And it's an area in Oregon where it is really difficult to rent. Really, like the rentals are very expensive, very hard to find. And we did, some might not agree, but we got lucky because we were actually able to find a place. It was like a little 2-bedroom trailer out in a hayfield kind of like thing. And it wasn't the best, but it was livable and it was, it was for us. And it had tires on the top of the trailer and it was to like catch lightning rods, because it's out there unprotected in a field. My grandson and we were throwing the frisbee and the dogs were out there playing, and for just a brief, and I talk about this in the book too, for just a brief moment, I forgot that his father was dead. I forgot that I was about to lose custody of him. we were just grandma and grandson playing frisbee, the dogs jumping, smiles on our faces, and the frisbee went up on the roof of this trailer, and I could not see it. I took a ladder up there. I'm not going to climb around on the roof, but I took a ladder, and so what I assumed was that it fell in one of the tires, and I was like, oh, that frisbee's gone. But it was very weird. I was climbing down the ladder, and I just stopped, and I looked up at the sky, and I said, Dev, can you get the frisbee down? And I don't know what would prompt me to say that. Well, the next morning I got up to take my grandson to school, and right in front of the car was the frisbee.
Wow.
So I have a photo. I mean, and that was pretty early on. I mean, there's a lot of signs, but that was probably the first one, because it was enough for me to actually take a picture of it and admit to myself, like, you asked him to do this, and then you get up the next morning and here's a frisbee laying like right on your walkway to the car, not in the backyard, not in the. So that
And
was
right there,
definitely
right
one.
where you can't miss it,
Right where I could not miss it.
Exactly.
No.
It could have came off anywhere or landed anywhere, but there it was right in front of your face. So how did writing this book help heal parts of you that were hurting the most?
I think for me, I definitely struggle with a lot of guilt for being alcoholic, and, shame for being such an alcoholic, and putting the kids through the things I put them through. And then, with Devin leaving, I couldn't make it up to him. I'd been sober about 2.5 years when he was killed. And he was seeing it.
Yeah.
But so I think, like, writing the book and being able to articulate some of that made some of that guilt go away.
Yeah.
The parental guilt, the alcoholic guilt, and then just like going through and documenting the signs that he really was giving me, because every time that poor kid gives me a sign, I'm like, oh, no, I'm making that up. No,
Yeah.
I'm crazy. No, I'm just grieving. No, this isn't real, because I mean, I come from a generation where, like, if you believe in, ghosts or mediums or psychics, that you might as well be wearing a tin hat and walking
Yeah.
around like a nut, So I didn't realize how programmed I was. And so I think that had a really big part of my healing journey too, was writing the signs, following up with a photo, and like to sit for hours and concentrate on just doing that. It, like, you can't then make it up. You
No,
can't then
exactly.
gaslight yourself basically
Yeah.
and say, I just made that up. So that was it just solidified.
Yeah.
You know,
Reaffirmed it for you that these were signs
yeah.
and these were messages. Yeah. No doubt about it. For anyone that doesn't believe, you are an example of, beyond this life here on earth. There are, our loved ones that are still here, and they give us signs daily. And you have to be in tune with that. You have to be willing to accept that. It's not just something that out of nowhere it's just going to happen. You're going to say, oh, one of the biggest things down here is cardinals. When you see a cardinal, a loved one, a lost loved one is near. So what kept you going during the moments when the grief felt too heavy or overwhelming?
Me, I think it's connection. I absolutely was very blessed. I went on a cruise with a medium called Suzanne Giesman. She's pretty famous medium, and she's kind of a no nonsense medium. She's got a really great background. She was aide to the chairman of the president of the United States. She's a Navy captain. She's married to a Navy captain destroyer. So it's not anybody that you would ever expect, to develop these abilities. And
Yeah.
so I was about 8 months after Devin passed, and I went on her cruise, and I got a roommate partnered up with another woman, and I got introduced to Helping Parents Heal, which is a support group for people who've lost their children. And it's a little different than some support groups, because they actually let you go into, talking about the afterlife. They provide safe, vetted resources, mediumship or doctors or, neurosciences, things that, people who can speak on, consciousness surviving death. So that was probably the biggest key for me, was having that foundation, those people. Because I will be honest with you, I went to a support group meeting after Devin, and I just saw these people coming in and they were just still destroyed
Yeah.
after 10, 20 years. And I just thought, I won't make it. I won't make it 20 years of this much like sadness and grief. And then in the murdered children, support groups, it was really, the same way. And so when I found that group, and they strive to connect with their children, and, they strive to, still live a life of joy.
You sort of, you sort of found your village there, your supportive village and I can only imagine, I have no kids. That's why it's Uncle Jimmy's podcast, because I'm the fun uncle that I get to give the kids back, but I can only imagine, here you are living your life and you lose your son. He's 28 years old. And, some people, I don't think losing, not even just losing a loved one. People always say, "Oh, I'm over it." You never get over it.
No,
You never get
you
over it.
do not.
Whether you lose your mom or dad and they're in their 90s, or, you lose someone when they're older or younger, that pain never goes away, but you found this group, you go on the cruise, you find this organization that, helps you get back on your feet, essentially,
Yeah.
to start thinking a little clearer. And, so how did your experience with spiritual messages change your understanding of love, life, and what comes after?
Well, I have to say, like, my son's very, very communicative.
Yeah.
So between the automatic writings and, I did receive a very valid mediumship reading from him, after the cruise. And so I do a lot of writing where he just kind of takes over, and he teaches me a lot of things about what it's like to be in spirit. And that his main message is that after we leave here, there is only love.
Yeah.
Like, God is love. There's only love. So, when I'm in traffic and I'm bitching about it, or one of the kids didn't do dishes and I'm grouchy about it, he just will pop in and he's just like, it really isn't that big of a deal. It's really about love. And
Yeah.
I remember early on, and still to this day, he's funny. It's like a cartoon character almost. And, his message is always like, lighten up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're dead. I can't lighten up. And he's like, I'm not dead. I'm right here. So that's mind blowing stuff, and I mean, don't get me wrong. It's still really sad. He's not physically here. I
Yeah.
don't get to hug him, and I don't get to watch him be a father and watch him, eventually be a grandfather. So I don't ever want to mislead anybody that part's happy, because it's not. But there is a tremendous amount of teachings and knowledge that he can bring to me, that he does bring to me. Wisdom, guidance.
Yeah.
Mostly, lighten up. It's all about love. And,
Love.
I didn't really die. I'm still right here.
Yeah. Yeah. Still right next to you, walking with you, and, making sure you're okay, So were there people in your life who didn't understand your spiritual experiences? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Well, I'm pretty sure that there are people in my life. I just have been very fortunate, like I said, to surround myself with a support group that is of like mind. And I have to say, because I have 3 other adult children, and I have to say, I'm really blessed because they understand, they get their own signs. And I actually write about a little bit of that in the book, and they don't give me a hard time about it. But I have to admit, so when we're recording this, the book hasn't launched yet.
Yeah.
It will launch on December 16th of 2025, which is exactly 3 years after Devin passed. And I have been concerned how other people because there's so many people who love my son. I mean, and they're not all going to believe what I believe or understand the messages I get. So I've been concerned what it's going to feel like to other people that I'm on a podcast smiling. It's 3 years since my son was murdered by my book, type thing. In all honesty, I've been really, really lucky not to have too much of that. The people that are the closest to me, that I care about the most, they're on board.
Yeah. And I think, one of the biggest things you have to do is block out those people. And, regardless of the critics, as they say, this is your story, right? This isn't anybody else's story. This is your story. This is your
And
journey.
Devin's.
and Devin's story. This is your journey, turning your pain into purpose, right? And think about it, when your book comes out, how many people may have lost a son or a daughter, or maybe lost a loved one, a mom or a dad, and they read it and they see things like, certain signs that you're talking about in the book and certain little things that Devin's saying to you. And they're realizing that, one of the biggest things is my podcast, like I like to say, is if one person, downloads this and they listen to, your story, Jackie, and take from it the lessons, that you learned, how to deal with grief, dealing with grief, right in the book. But for anyone to say, oh, you're on a podcast, smiling about it and selling books. No, it's not about that. It's about you coming on and sharing, being vulnerable almost, telling your story of what you went through, unimaginable to think your son, 28 years old, gets killed by his ex-wife. She only gets 10 years in jail, 7.5, like you said, 8.5, I think, because she had a year and a half served, and still has custody of your grandson, absolutely crazy. And to me, anybody can say what they want, but you're here speaking your story. This is your story and Devin's story. This isn't anybody else's. So for the naysayers and people, the non-believers, you know what? Don't buy the book. But if you're a believer and you want to hear Jackie's story from, pain, talking about her son that she lost and the signs that she got from him, you're going to go out and purchase the book, So if you could speak to your past self, the version of you standing in your darkest moments, what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh, stop doubting. You're just making yourself hurt worse. Stop doubting. He really is right here.
Yeah, and nobody can. Sorry about that. I don't know what the hell that was. Can you still see me?
Huh? I can see you.
I don't know. My email popped up. Sorry. So what I was saying is, shoot, here we go. So what I was saying is like you said, you stop doubting yourself. Again, that's your son, coming to you, and you've talked to your kids about it. They've had signs. I've had signs from people that have passed in my life. I've had readings myself, small little things. I'll tell you, a reading that I had is, you know, um, someone that told me, all I can say is, I can't get into the story because it's a bit emotional for me, but I see a fire truck every day, and that has a special meaning to me every day. I was in
Wow.
Vancouver for 5 nights, and I see a fire truck. I've seen a fire truck every day ever since I got this reading. Every day,
Wow.
every
That's
day.
impressive.
I was up
That's
I was up in Stowe, Vermont, and I was in the hot tub Friday night, and guess what drives by? Fire truck. Saturday, I'm in the hot tub. Guess what pulls up to the hotel? A fire truck.
wow.
So
Wow.
it's, Sunday driving home, there's a fire truck. Every day, there's a fire truck. So, for those that don't believe in it, believe me, I've experienced it. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I can't wait to purchase the book, for the simple fact is I can't wait to hear your journey, in Devin's journey, and him still being here next to you in spirit, right there with you, encouraging you, pushing you, laughing at you, making fun of you, he's still right there.
Oh
And don't let
man.
anybody tell you any different. Don't let anybody tell you any different, So in the moments when you felt closest to breaking, what brought you back to yourself?
I think it's just like love for my kids,
Yeah.
and just knowing that I had let them all down so badly as a parent when they were growing up, that I didn't want to crack or crumble and let them down now when they really needed me. So I think that was like a lot of what held me together. And then, I would get like these songs put in my head that would
Yeah.
just like play a verse or two over and over. And one of the songs that it still does it, actually, it plays a lot. It is Every Little Thing's Gonna Be All Right.
Yeah.
And so that, what I don't know, it's just that song, when it plays over and over, just a lyric or two that kind of like brings you out of it. It's interesting how much power that has,
That
because
has, yeah.
you're just being submerged in a memory or a dark thought, or reliving the shoot. For me, it was reliving the shooting over and over and over, or reliving my grandson being taken, and reliving the last phone call I had with him, and it's you just get looped in there and you just can't get out sometimes. And then the song will just play, and pretty soon it pulls your attention, and you'll start having to like, oh wait, what's that? And you'll
There you
listen and you'll listen, and you'll hear it, and you'll go round and round, and then all of a sudden what you were so deeply down into is gone.
It's gone.
It's it's gone. So I wrote a lot about that, and Devin did, tell me and gave me an automatic writing about songs, and sort of the energetic way that they put them into your mind, and
Yeah.
what they're for. So the song lyrics were a big help, even though I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Jackie, I know you keep, beating yourself up over, being a, when you were younger and raising your kids, you said you were, you had some, drinking problem and all that. And all that I can say to you is today, you still have a relationship with your three kids that are left, right?
Absolutely, and it's a very powerful relationship, and it's better than it ever has.
And all that I'm saying to you is just take 1 second and just remind yourself that you are human, right?
Yeah.
Mistakes,
Yep.
you have three great kids, one that, Devin's, passed, but you have three great kids. You have great relationship with the three of them. What happened in the past is in the past, don't beat yourself up over it. You're still here. You're still present. You still spend as much time as you can with them. Create those memories, don't beat yourself up over it. There's no reason to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because, life's so short, in that you don't want to live your whole life regretting, oh, I did this in the past, or I did this in the past. What's happened in the past is gone. You can't make up for it. You can't change it. There's nothing you can do, but all you can do is wake up every morning and be a better person than you were yesterday.
That's right. And I think of that every day. That's exactly it. Like, there's nothing that I can do. I can't change any of that.
Yeah.
And so I can just wake up, and every day I wake up and I say, I'm sober. I'm never
Yeah.
gonna, I'm not gonna drink, because I'm gonna be a better person today than I was back then.
No, and thank God for your sobriety, and also thank God, your kids are still there. They're right beside you. Oh,
Yeah.
they have your back. And so don't let, like I said, don't let anybody tell you any different. Mistakes are always made in life, but it's how we correct them, how we fix them, and how we move on in life. And you got sober, you have a great relationship with your kids. So it's one of those things where I'm, just don't be too hard on yourself,
Yeah. I just tell it because it is part of my story.
No doubt
And
about it.
so one thing that I do is, I'm I'm really active in sobriety. So I definitely am really, really helpful. Anybody who's struggling, who needs, a ear, who needs a little direction, needs a little inspiration. So sobriety is a big part of it's my story. And I really want people to understand. I mean, if I could stay sober through the murder of my son and the loss of court for trial, grandson, all of it, like, there is hope for anybody to be able to stay sober.
Yeah. Nope. And that's huge, So how has your loss shaped the person you are today? And what parts of you feel completely transformed?
So I have to say, I think the biggest change in me is when I was on the cruise, I received a Reiki session, an energy healing session from the other mom that was in the support group that I was her roommate. I don't know, it was out of 8 months of pure grief, hell, darkness. It was, for that 30 minutes, it was such a reprieve. And I said, like, at that point, I go, I got to learn to do this. And I got to learn to do this for other mamas, because it was like, I just don't even know. There's not words for, like, the relief and the hurt that went down and the peace that came for a little while. So I definitely made that like a big time mission. And I study Reiki. I'm Reiki master now. I give Reiki sessions, to other mamas, like I had said I would, and then I took it a little further. I, took some quantum healing courses, and I do some quantum healings, group healings. And with all of that, and with Devin's communication, like that, like intuitiveness kicked on, so there's, which I would have never believed in before, but, then there's this, there's like a psychic piece to it, some intuitiveness to it. So that has completely changed who I am. I speak with Devin, with my guides, with angels, to make sure that, I'm doing a better job softly going through life, instead of just plowing,
Yeah,
plowing
no,
through life. So that has been a really massive change.
nope, that's huge. So now what would you say to someone who desperately wants to believe their loved one is still with them, but hasn't yet felt a sign?
So I believe that they are giving us signs. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book and the way that I wrote the book. And one of the reasons why I sort of go a little heavy handed on my guilt and my shame, because I really want someone to understand that in my mindset and how I felt about myself, how I felt about myself as a mother, I was still getting signs. And when I would reject those signs, I still kept getting them. So it is truly 100% my belief that we all get signs. It's just that our humanness makes us reject them. So when other moms, and they do say, I haven't received a sign, other people in my support group, I don't communicate like you do, I haven't received a sign. I mean, you are getting signs. It's just a matter of accepting them, of softening and opening yourself enough to be able to, understand what a sign is, because that's the truth. I didn't know what a sign was. I thought that if there was an afterlife and my son was talking to me, he was going to appear right in front of me and he was going to say, Mom, and it's so subtle.
Subtle, yeah.
It's so subtle, and it's something, therefore you're talking about seeing a fire truck every day. For 6 months, I didn't go anywhere without feathers falling all over me.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, I'd find just in the craziest places, feathers sticking out. And so I was like, that's not a sign. There was a bird there. Everybody has feathers, so I think it is definitely, I believe in my heart, every single person who's grieving a loved one, their loved one is sending them a sign. And it's just a matter of not speaking their language.
Yeah. I think you have
It's
to
no
open your,
different.
I think you have
It's
to
no
open your
different.
heart.
Yeah, it's no different than going to Japan when we don't speak Japanese,
Yeah.
and having somebody offer us great customer service, but we didn't know what they said. So, they might have been telling us to move when in reality they're telling us, welcome, we love you, we're so glad you're here, but we can't speak their language. So I think education is the best thing you can do, is, educate yourself on, past, that your consciousness does survive death. Educate yourself on, how loved ones give signs.
Yeah. So how do you continue to honor the memory of Devin in your daily life?
Well, I post his writings, his automatic writings a lot. And
Where can people find that?
so I have a most active on my Facebook page.
Okay.
And I just named it. I changed names of it. It is Light After Darkness, because that's kind of where we're at now. We're at the Light After Darkness. And I do have a website, JackieSuzanne.com also. But so I post his writings, and I honestly, I honor him every day when I get up and I stay sober. That's the pledge that I make too. And I do spend a lot of time, trying to help other people as far as like sobriety and their grief and things like that go. And then so his birthday is December 2nd, and then his death date was December 16th. So he loved pancakes. When he was a little boy, we would go, once a year to a fancy restaurant, and it was kind of a big deal, but we couldn't go anywhere too fancy if they didn't have pancakes, because that's what Devin was going to order, was pancakes. So on his birthday, and and our family and friends and people who, celebrate him, we eat pancakes and whipped cream on his birthday. And that, I know, like, that's not a big foundation after his name or anything like that, but that is how we honor him, because that's who he was. He was just a sweet, simple boy who liked ice cream and whipped cream on his pancakes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I got two more questions for you. So what did you learn about the strength of a mother's love through your journey?
That death doesn't destroy it, that a mother can be so strong for her kids or for herself under the most just cruel conditions that you can imagine. That there's just a strength in a mother's love that I don't think people understand.
Yeah, no, I often say it, when I lost my mom, and you may get me to cry here a little bit, is that there's no love like a mother's love, right? It's unconditional. It's unwavering. You're supported 100%. And when you lose your mom, it's one of those things where the person that loves you the most, or that loved you away like nobody else could, is now gone. And it's tough, because a mother's love is one of the hardest things to not have anymore. I know she's here in the, spirit sense and all that, but it's tough not, like you said, get a hug, to get a phone call, to get something so small that, I would give anything for 20 seconds back with my mom, So last question. Finally, when you think about your story now, what fills your heart the most? Courage, healing, connection, or something else entirely?
Connection. I think for me, connecting to other people who are going through what I'm going through, but also just in a manner of like holding each other up. And I really learned a lot about allowing people to hold me and help me. Because I will be honest with you, there were times that I couldn't stand up, that I couldn't hold myself up,
Yeah.
that I couldn't take a step forward. And I had no choice but to allow. And I was so blessed to have people who would come and literally hold me, pick me up, basically, and walk me and walk with me. I learned a lot about that, receiving that kind of love from other people. And then it's helped me learn how to walk beside other people instead of trying to fix everything for somebody. I can just simply be present, simply
Be present,
with
be
them.
support. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. So for me, one last thing before we go, for anyone out there that's been through what, the loss of a son or a daughter that have been, taken from us too soon, what are some words that you could give to some of the families out there that are still struggling with what you went through?
I think that the words of encouragement are our children truly, truly want us to live our lives. They really want us to find joy, to find a way to move through this world in a manner of which we can be loving and feel loved, and that we can smile again, that we can be happy, and that we can be at peace with the fact that they're still here with us.
Yeah. No, so Jackie, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your, heartbreaking, emotional story, but your path forward after everything that had happened. Getting sober, fighting for your grandson and just being there for your other kids, and being there for yourself. Jackie, we thank you for sharing your heart with us today. Your vulnerability, your strength, and your willingness to speak your truth offers a beacon of hope to anyone navigating loss or searching for deeper meaning. Your story reminds us that even in the darkest chapters of life, there can be messages of love guiding us forward if we're open to receiving them. Your courage to turn tragedy into healing, your willingness to help others, and your beautifully intuitive spirit shine through every word you spoke today. To everyone listening, let Jackie's journey remind us that healing isn't linear, that love never leaves us, and that light can find us even when we feel lost. There is comfort, connection, and guidance all around us. Sometimes we just need someone like Jackie to show us how to recognize it. Jackie, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being here, for being brave, and for being such a radiant presence. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves, hold your loved ones close, and stay open to the messages meant for you. Peace and love, Uncle Jimmy out.